Welcome into the Sportsmemo podcast for Wednesday, January 9th. We're talking NBA and college basketball on this segment with Robbie Veno. Rob, welcome into the podcast. How are you?
I am good today, Drew. How are you?
I'm doing good. We got 3 games set up here. College basketball. Then we got 2 in the NBA. We'll break down here, Robbie. I know you got to play up in college basketball. And guys, you can use the coupon code podcast9 to get Robbie's play for just $9. We usually do $9 Mondays. But with this coupon code, you can get any play, mine, Robbie's, any play on the board for just $9 using the coupon code podcast9. That's today only. Robbie, we got game number 815-816 primetime in the ACC. Clemson at Syracuse, 131 the total with the Orange laying 3 in the Carrier Dome.
Yeah, and before we get into the game, Drew, let's just, because you breezed right over it here, let's let the people know that the coupon code, when you just said you have a play up, guys need to know 5% college basketball total play from Drew here tonight. And last couple of years hitting over 60%. I know it's been good for you, Drew, but I don't want to just glaze over that fact for the listeners. So for those of you that are going to get involved tonight, certainly Drew's 5% college total, a solid choice for purchase here this evening. Clemson Syracuse, Drew, let's look at it here, because I picked this game to go over here today just because of gut feeling. And a lot of times, we put so much time and effort into the numbers and into the injuries and into the situationals, the technicals, all of that stuff. But sometimes as bettors, hunch, gut feeling, it does prevail. And I've kind of got that. I got my eye on Syracuse, maybe not necessarily for this particular game, although I still may get there, but certainly for the future. A couple of things I see out of them. To start the season, they were without their starting point guard, Frank Howard, which hurt them quite a bit. He's been back for quite some time now, close to a dozen games here. But it really seemed like he didn't get the engine rolling right off the bat. When we go through mid-December and we're paying attention to bowl games and NFL regular season winding down, heading into the playoffs, and college basketball is kind of sporadic at that time. Lots of tournaments, non-conference stuff, maybe people not playing every day. But for Syracuse, it took a little bit of time for this team to begin to roll the way that most prognosticators thought they would roll coming into the season. Syracuse into tonight has played 3 games, only 3 games in their last 18 days, but all 3 are wins, all 3 are covers over Arkansas State, St. Bonaventure, and then their ACC opener against Notre Dame, which they win by 10, 72-62, as a 1-point favorite, so pretty decisive victory. But in those 3 games over 19 days, I think that long layoff has really helped this team kind of become cohesive again with Frank Howard at the point of attack. And I'm interested to see how they play against Clemson tonight, because Clemson is a team that's, I would consider to be one of the better groups since Brad Brownell has taken over at Clemson, and they come off a tough loss to Duke the other day. No shame in losing to Duke. A lot of people are going to do that this year. But for Clemson, this is a bounce-back game. They've certainly got every bit as much talent as Syracuse. Game opened 5, comes down to 3 right now, or I think I see some 3.5s as we speak right here, Drew. So a little bit of push towards Syracuse. But my power rating suggested Syracuse is 7 better in this game, so there's a little discrepancy there. My power ratings are they are always very, very unbiased and numerically based. I don't put a ton of my own opinion into the power rating number, because I want the power rating number to be a grounding foundation, a base to start a handicap with, and then I'll go through what I've seen with my own eyes after that. But I like to have that number in front of me. I think Syracuse has a real opportunity here at home. Don't know that I want to rush right to the window with them, only because for Clemson, this is another ACC game and a bounce-back opportunity for them. Obviously, venues don't shake Clemson, but Carrier Dome's a tough place to play. Like I said, I brought this game up and I wanted to bring it to attention today just for folks out there to keep an eye on Syracuse now. I believe that that's a train that we might be a little bit ahead of and might be able to get rolling with here down the road.
Robbie, a team we're going to talk about next, TCU. It's a team that I was on early a little bit, but didn't have too much success with them. I know they had a lot of injuries early on. Haven't followed them much of recent, but do they have most of their guys back? They're on the road here in Lawrence, 151 the total, with Kansas laying 6.
Yeah, let's get into this, Drew, because this is a game where there certainly are key players not involved, or maybe not involved. The one that we know won't be involved is Kansas starting center Udoka Azubuike. The 7-footer came back, played well, and now all of a sudden gets hurt again. He's out for the season, and without him, they become what has been, what Dick Vitale used to describe as a donut team, a team without anything in the middle. They went to a 4-guard offense Saturday against Iowa State without Azubuike. But their 4 guards, Dotson, Grimes, Garrett, and Vic, they're all 6'5" or less. So you've got a very small team now. Bill Self is going to have to change the style. You figure them to go up-tempo here. Their only other their 5th starter, Dedrick Lawson, is the only size on the team, 6'9". And they don't come off the bench with a lot of experience size, Drew. They got a couple of guys, a freshman McCormick, 6'10", and then sophomore KJ Lawson, 6'8". There's not a lot of experience and size to go in the middle. It really hurts this team. But we'll see if it hurts them. I shouldn't use that word. We'll see if it hurts them, but it changes them. Changes the dynamic of Kansas. You'd expect them to be a lot more open floor now. Saturday was their first game since it was announced that Azubuike was gone for this season. They didn't fare well, 77-60. Just don't match up well in this 4-guard offense against Iowa State, in my opinion. We'll see how they do here tonight against TCU. Now, where TCU's concerned, we look at Jalen Fisher, arguably the best player on the team the last couple of years, suffered a major injury, as we all know. Comes back this year missed the first 4, I think, and then played the next 8. They go 8-0 against the spread in those 8 games with him. And Saturday he was out against Baylor, a game in which TCU built a real big lead and then hung on for dear life at the end without Fisher in that lineup. Baylor gets the cover at Fort Worth. TCU hung on for the win. So it'll be interesting to see. You're talking about a guy who's that important to a team, a guy who is out first 4 games of the year, comes back, team runs off 8 straight point spread victories, then he's out again, and they lose against the spread in their most recent outing. Now, he's questionable tonight with a knee injury. We'll see. As it gets closer to game time, we'll see. If he's out there, how effective he'll be obviously is in question. But this game becomes a style matchup type game because TCU does have a big man, Kevin Samuels, 6'11", 250 in the middle. The question becomes here, Drew, can he take advantage of the fact that KU doesn't have a big guy tonight? Or does KU push pace so much at home that the 6'11", 250 becomes a non-factor and you have to sit him on the bench because he can't keep up with the pace of the game? TCU's guard-oriented as well. Let's not forget they're pretty much a smallish team, and their better players are their guards, are pretty good three-point shooting team. So this could turn into an up and down. I think that's why we see the total at 151 just staying there and not really having any movement so far today. Like I say, Fisher's a big deal. Azubuike is a big deal too. The Jayhawks are 1-4 against the spread without him. They went through a holiday tournament, 4-game tournament where they did not have him, or a couple of tournaments where they didn't have him, and the opponents were pretty good, Drew. New Mexico State, Villanova, Arizona State. They didn't cover against any of the good teams. The only cover they had in that mix without Azubuike in the lineup was against South Dakota, a team that they should dominate. And then, of course, they come back without him and lose another point spread outcome and straight-up outcome to Iowa State. So they haven't been great. Without their starting center, they're going to have to shift. We'll see what the rest of the month of January brings. Personally, I think this will probably end up being one of those up-and-down games, and the 151 probably sits in a good space right now.
All right, Robbie. And guys, remember the coupon code podcast9 at checkout. Any play today for just $9. Got a 5% up on a total I really like. Robbie's got a play up, college basketball. A bunch of plays up, 4%, 3%, hockey, NBA, whatever tickles your fancy. It's up there at sportsmemo.com for tonight's action. Big card in college basketball, NBA, and in hockey. Podcast 9 at checkout will give you any play. You can get more than one for just $9 at sportsmemo.com. Robbie, let's do another college basketball game here. A rivalry in the state of Florida, 835-836. Miami at Florida State. Looks like a total of 150 and a half. And Florida State laying 10 in Tallahassee.
Yeah, and we saw Saturday, Drew. Miami's a depleted team right now. Only had 7 players for Saturday against Louisville. Louisville put the pedal to the gas. They win going away 90-73. And Florida State could probably do that in even more harsh fashion because Florida State is one of your deepest teams, as it seems like they always are. They're one of the deepest teams in the country. And when you're playing a team with only 7 guys, certainly you can take advantage of that if you're Leonard Hamilton, head coach of FSU. We see the point spread 10.5 drop down to 10. Jimmy Larinaga, head coach for Miami, certainly doesn't want to play at that pace with only a 7-man rotation. You want to slow the game down. Whoever can dictate pace is going to end up being your point spread winner here. I would venture to say that Florida State should be the team that is able to. If Louisville was able to, you'd have to believe that Florida State is going to be able to. But if they do, maybe the best bet in this game would be the total going up and over. I don't see a lot of resistance from the Miami of Florida side defensively here. Their best bet is obviously to just try and slow this thing down to a crawl and make it a low-scoring game. But again, you watch Florida State play, and they've struggled. Let's face it, they have not been a point spread juggernaut as of late. So let's not, throw Florida State up on a pedestal at this particular point in time. But they are supremely talented, and it's more than likely just a blip in the radar here with the point spread record as of late. But in a game like you say, a rivalry where they can get charged up against this Miami team, and knowing coming in that they have a significant bench advantage, a significant personnel advantage in this game, and seeing what Louisville did to Miami the other day, I'm sure that has to make Florida State anxious to get out on the floor. A couple of ways to bet it. I mean, depending upon which way you feel the pace of this game is going to go, but if you do believe that Florida State in their building can control pace here, then you would have to think that over is a smart play and potentially even laying 10 points.
Good stuff there on the college basketball board, Robbie. Let's move on to the professional slate. In the NBA, we got top of the card here, 5:17, 5:18, 7:05 Eastern tip. Philadelphia at Washington, 228 the total. Seeing, 3.5? Philadelphia laying on the road?
3.5 on the road, and it's a repeat, right? They just played last night. Philly blew Washington out. Washington had come off of a big victory. Bradley Beal had a big game a few nights ago, and then they walk into Philadelphia. And, the matchup just hasn't been good for Washington anyway, Drew. Recent history shows a bunch of covers for the Sixers against this team. But tonight, it could be a bit of a different story. Number one, you have back-to-backs. Just drive down the road to Washington, D.C. and play this one. But in back-to-back situations, you always worry about, with Philadelphia, the amount of minutes and the availability of Joel Embiid. Now, in their last back-to-back, which was maybe just a week ago, he did play in the second game of the back-to-back, which hasn't been the case all the time with Joel Embiid. Now, last night, got a bit of a breather because the game was such a blowout. In fact, I don't know if listeners saw it, but there was a point in that game where Joel Embiid just took it upon himself to go sit up in the crowd rather than be on the bench. So he did have an easy night of it last night. Maybe he comes back and plays minutes here. Maybe more importantly, J.J. Redick has a question mark beside his name here tonight. Back injury. Without J.J. Redick, Drew, for those who follow the Sixers, this is just not a good shooting team. He is their main shooter. Landry Shamet went off last night, the Wichita State product, and hit 9 threes, or 8 or 9 threes, I forget. But without Redick in the lineup, they do not shoot from the perimeter very well. So it'll be important to see if he plays in this game, maybe even more important than Embiid. I think Washington has an opportunity here. As depleted as they are injury-wise, they do have an opportunity here to come back and get a point spread victory. So I might be looking at that side here in this game.
And Robbie, how often does that happen? What, they just played last night and then they're playing tonight in the NBA? Does that happen a lot?
Very, very rarely, Dre. I know it happened to OKC in Dallas over the holiday, late December. They played in Oklahoma City, then turned around and played in Dallas the very next night. But it doesn't happen that often. I don't know why it happens scheduling-wise, but it does here. And we'll see. Philly, a team that dominates Washington. Certainly, if you just want to make a play on recent history, I could not fault anybody for playing Philadelphia here. They do seem to have their number matchup-wise. But the Redick issue to me is a big deal, and we'll see what Embiid gets 4 minutes in this back-to-back game.
Yeah, that is a unique handicap in itself, playing the same team in back-to-back nights. I mean, that's got motivation questions. That I would love to see the long-term trends on that, because I'm not going to pretend to beat the NBA betting markets, but I believe that scenario right there, it's so unique in itself that there could be an edge. We got 5-3-1, 5-3-2, Orlando at Utah, 207.5 the total. Looks like the Jazz laying 9 in Salt Lake.
Yeah, and we bring this game up here as part of the card for the podcast today, Drew, because of the injury situation for Utah at point guard. I mean, not only is starting point guard Ricky Rubio now out indefinitely, but backup point guard Dante Exum now out indefinitely, both with injuries, at least 2 weeks worth in the case of Rubio, probably the same in the case of Exum. It means that third-team point guard Raul Neto has to step up and play significant minutes here in this game. You would like to have an opponent in this instance with a point guard, with a defensive-minded point guard that could really hound Neto for the majority of this game and maybe wear him down. In the case of Orlando, the starting point guard is DJ Augustine, and they come off the bench with a little bit of help, but they're not necessarily a team with really hounding defensive point guards. So we'll see. I think if you're Orlando, you would take all of your point guards tonight and throw them out there and tell them that for the minutes you play, I want you to just be as aggressive as possible defensively against Utah, because Utah's bench after Neto, there's no point guard. You're probably going to see Donovan Mitchell handling the ball for a little bit in this game, not his customary role, and maybe a couple of others. But it's just an interesting situation here. I think that you could certainly take advantage of Orlando +9. Like I say, they don't have the greatest or the most Patrick Beverly type point guards who are just going to get up in your face for the entire time you're on the floor. They don't have that, but I think for one game you might see that here out of Orlando. So +9 to me, Orlando very capable. The problem with them is that offensively they fade in and out. Not only for a couple of games, but even for quarters they fade in and out. So they're a little bit questionable on the offensive end, but may have enough here tonight. I think that Orlando +9 certainly worth a look, considering the point guard situation Utah brings into this one.
Guys, remember the coupon code podcast9 at checkout for any play on the Sportsmemo slate for tonight. We got a 5% play up in the college basketball totals market. We got 4% up, 3% up in NHL, NBA, college basketball. Using the podcast 9 at checkout will give you any play for just $9. You can use it over and over. Get one, get many, whatever you'd like to do. Robbie, great pod, good information. Anything else you want to throw out before we shut this down?
I don't know, Drew. I won't be on the pod for the remainder of the week, so good luck to everybody with the NFL divisional round this weekend. Certainly considered to be the most fun round for fans of the NFL throughout the season. We got 4 great matchups. I myself am going to be entering a 5% play, so be on the lookout for that. It will either be up later this evening or tomorrow morning first thing. But great weekend for football and, of course, the college basketball. Now, in good tune with the college hoops now, Drew. Myself, 6-1 to start the week this week in baskets, and of course counting the Clemson over to end the college football season. But I think that right now we're in a pretty good groove in the hoops as well. So good time to get on board, and hope everybody has good luck with the NFL this weekend.
And Robbie's 4-0, his last 4, 6 of 7. You said the Clemson over there, Robbie. Any tidbits you're taking away from the national championship game on things you're looking for next year?
I don't think it's anything that those of us who bet college football every week didn't already know, Drew. I think we knew where these two teams stood as the two teams that have now grown to be significantly ahead of the rest, and that's not going to change next year because of the talent level coming back. But, Alabama, once again, defensively exposed. We've seen it over the years in these big games by teams that are, that can spread the field, that can push the football down the field. Deshaun Watson did it a couple of years ago. Trevor Lawrence did it this year. That's the kind of team you need to be. So I don't think these two are going anywhere. It's up to the rest of the college football world to catch up, and we'll see if they can. But I don't know that we learned anything special off of that game, except for the fact that maybe, Drew, in modern day football, it doesn't really matter how good your defense is. Great offense is going to beat great defense. Clemson came in with a magnificent defense. Did hold up for the last 9 series of that game for sure, but Alabama shot themselves in the foot a couple of times. But as good as Alabama's defense was, not vintage, but elite nonetheless, they just got blasted by Clemson's offense. So maybe great offense just beats good defense nowadays.
Robbie, would you take Alabama and Clemson versus the field to win the national championship? Who would you bet on, even odds?
I would have to say, and of course we're doing it on paper without knowing what's going to take place injury-wise next season, but I would think at this point, based on my power ratings, the way they concluded the season, Drew, these two teams on a neutral were 9 points better than the next best team. So I would say I would take Alabama and Clemson against the field.
Wow. It's it's getting that way. I mean, for the next 5 years, do you think there'll be another national champion not named Clemson or Alabama?
Well, we'll see what Kirby Smart can do at Georgia, because he seems to be next in line. He's pushing, and I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility for Tom Herman and Texas, the way they've been able to recruit there. Oklahoma just doesn't seem to be able to put together enough defense, but from what we see out of Texas, maybe the defense is coming along. Those two teams have the components. Georgia has the components on all ends. Recruiting, facilities, on all ends, those three teams do have it. Can't see anybody off the West Coast right now, Drew. And really, nobody else, as I try to think as fast as I can here off the top of my head. The Michigans and the Ohio States of the world. Really, Ohio State's going to always be right there as well. It just seems that they lose so much talent to the draft. As soon as they get it, it leaves. And it's difficult for them. But, maybe we're talking about a half a dozen teams, right? That's all we're talking about here.
Yeah, what about some of the other kind of stronger SEC teams that aren't necessarily on Alabama's level or even Georgia's, maybe like the Texas A&M, Florida, Auburns of the world? You think any of them can make a run here?
Well, A&M's a good example, Drew, because Jimbo Fisher, obviously in his first year, did better than I expected, probably better than most expected, and he can certainly recruiting-wise bring Texas A&M to their facilities are second to none. So they are that whole SEC West, right? I mean, I could go through LSU with Ed Ogeron. If he ever gets a legitimate quarterback, they're going to be as tough as anybody. We see that every single year. Auburn, always right there as far as talent is concerned. So the SEC West, you could almost take that entire group. We'll see what Joe Moorhead does with Mississippi State. I think that bowl game was a very, very disappointing result for MSU in his first year as head coach, but he is going to turn that offense around a little bit. And maybe Dan Mullen at Florida, as I look to the east here, brings that team as well. So I think we just mentioned like 7 SEC teams that have the capability. But the pool is limited. Let's put it that way. The pool right now is limited. I can't think outside the box. I'd love to be able to say UCF, but I can't really say UCF off of the bowl game. LSU played them with half of a defense and still won convincingly. So we'll see. It looks like those are the teams. SEC West, a couple from the East, Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma. And let's hope somebody else can get involved there. Washington out of the Pacific Northwest just doesn't look like they're going to be able to get there. Maybe Oregon can take the next step. We'll see.
And Robbie, I know you're into media, so is your son. Is there any kind of realignment talks going on in the next year or two?
I haven't seen much in the way of realignment. It would be nice. I know for those of us who, are true fans, college football happens to be a passion of mine. I would love to see Central Florida in a better conference than the AAC, although the AAC is coming on, and maybe Central Florida and Cincinnati will be a huge battle for the top seed for some time. But you'd like to see some of these teams adjust. You'd like to see somebody else inside that Big 12, perhaps a Mountain West squad. Fresno State maybe could move out of there. But I just don't see anything as of yet. Those are difficult things to have happen, Drew. We wish you could just snap your fingers and make them happen out of pure common sense and logic, but we know that the dollars and a lot of other things go into that. So I don't see it in the foreseeable future. We'll find out.
You bring up UCF. If next year, they played let's just say a Big 12 schedule. So what's that, 9 games? You play every team in the Big 12, I believe. What would you say that their conference record would be?
Oh, I think they'd be fun in the Big 12, Drew. I think they would be every bit. I would put them on the level of West Virginia right away. Without even hesitating, I would say they would be a West Virginia type threat inside that league. And once you get into a league like that, the ability to recruit becomes even stronger. So I think that program could be built. But I would place them power rating wise, threat for the conference title wise, right on the same level as a West Virginia type team.
So, projecting out, would you say a 9-game conference schedule, maybe 6-3?
Yeah, I would certainly give them 6-3 as a legitimate number with potential, depending upon how the season breaks, to maybe do a game better or a game worse. So somewhere right in that vicinity, 6-3. I think they wouldn't sit in the cellar. I'll say that much. I think they would be ahead of. And that's a pretty good league, competition-wise. But I think 6-3 is a legitimate number for them. Yes.
Yeah, interesting stuff there, Robbie. Well, thanks for the time. Best of luck tonight, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow we'll be back with the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast divisional round. So thank you, Robbie, and best of luck with your bets out there, guys.